Hello, welcome to our lecture on reapportionment and gerrymandering. This is a hot topic issue, especially after the U.S. Census every year, but it's also very influential in elections and gets talked about a lot when it comes to elections. So, reapportionment. Let's define some terms first. So first off, you have reapportionment, and this is just the practice of redistributing congressional seats. So we have 435 congressional seats. This is dealing with the House of Representatives only, and every 10 years we have to redistribute those seats because the population in the country changes. Like, people move from one part of the country to another part of the country. So it is based on U.S. Census. The census is done every 10 years. 2020 was the last time it was done. Next time the census will be done will be 2030. Reapportionment occurs in 2021 or 2031 for the next one. And that is where the Census Bureau basically says, here are the states that should be gaining a representative, here are states that are losing a representative, and here are states that are maintaining the number that they've been having, but they probably need to adjust their district lines. So this process is determined, this is used to determine how many representatives each state gets, which then reflects to how many, the power, I should say, of the state in government. So back in 1929, the Reapportionment Act was passed, and this established permanently that the House of Representatives was only going to have 435 people. So we are coming very close to being 100 years that the number of representatives has not increased. Our population has significantly increased, but that number has not. So there is a movement, it's rather small at the moment, of people who want to increase the number of representatives we have so that it can better reflect and represent better represent the people of this country. So as state population shifts, so do their state seats. So as people move from, say, the Northeast to the South, or from the West to the Southwest, or from the South to the West, and vice versa, then the shift in seats also is following that trend. So here is a map of the reapportionment from 2010, who gained seats, who lost seats. So you need to think, what are the implications of gaining a seat? What does that mean for the states that are gaining seats in reference to the House of Representatives, the say that they might have at the national level? And then also think about what that might mean if you're losing seats for those states. And do notice that Louisiana territory here, right there, is kind of an outlier in losing seats. But this was 5 years after Hurricane Katrina, and a lot of those people had not come back yet. They lost a lot of people because of Hurricane Katrina, and those people had not returned yet. It'll be interesting to see how that changes for 2020. All right, so states are told, hey, you've gained a seat, lost a seat, or maintained a seat. But so once they've been reapportioned, once they have been shuffled around, then district lines must be redrawn. And even if a state does not lose a seat or gain a seat, they still have to redraw them because population shifted within their own state. People moved from urban areas to rural areas, or vice versa, or they moved from one part of the state to another part of the state, and so they've got to redraw those lines. So don't think it's just if they gained or lost. It has to be reflecting of population shifts within the state as well. So in Texas, they used to have 32 seats prior. In 2000, they had 32 seats. In 2010 census, they ended up with 36. So their redistricting requires that they have to draw 4 new districts. They have to take areas from different districts and make 4 new districts in that example. Now, here are the rules for redistricting. They can't just start drawing lines, okay? They must be roughly proportional. 1 person, 1 vote, meaning they have to be roughly the same number of people in each district. Typically, this is somewhere between 650,000 and 700,000 people per district. Malapportionment, or creating vastly unequal districts, is unconstitutional. There is a Supreme Court case that deals with this, but you cannot have a district of 1 million people and another district in the same state of 200,000. That does not work, and that's not fair. That is not one person, one vote, and that is not equal protection under the law. Districts must be contiguous. They must connect all together. And then redistricting plans may not discriminate on the basis of race. So you cannot create a district that is purposely drawn to benefit one race. And we have seen this in, at times, especially when states are trying to encourage or help minorities get a representative to represent them in government. But the Supreme Court has said that's not okay. You can consider race, but it cannot be the sole deciding factor on how a district is drawn. A couple important cases that you need to know. Baker versus Carr, this ruled that courts have jurisdiction over issues of legislative apportionment. So first they have to say, yep, so federal courts can hear these type of cases, that they are a constitutional issue, not a political issue. Then we have Westbury versus Sanders. This is where it officially establishes the one person, one vote standard. No malapportionment. You cannot have that lopsidedness that we have seen. And it's just because up until Westbury versus Sanders in the 60s, states were not necessarily redrawing district lines. If they didn't lose a seat or gain a seat, they didn't redraw the district lines, and so that's how the imbalance occurred. Shaw v. Reno, this was from the 90s, and this ruled that legislative redistricting must be conscious of race and ensure compliance with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but it cannot be solely focused on race. So you need to include race and consider race, but it cannot be the sole decision. What is gerrymandering? So gerrymandering is the practice of manipulating the district boundaries. So when we redistrict, a group of individuals who are in charge with that decide that they're going to draw those lines to be an advantage for a political party. Up until 2020, most district lines were being drawn by state legislatures, which are political. So whoever had control of the state legislature, the state Congress, then they got to decide. And yeah, they're going to draw these lines to benefit their party. Starting in 2020, we saw a much higher number of states choosing to be what's called a independent commission. So they hire it out to somebody who should not be considering political parties too much, but they even can be influenced by political parties. Typically gerrymandering, when you look at a state map, is going to have some funky shapes. They're not squares, they're not rectangles, or kind of more rectangles. They are very, very odd shaped. So there's a video on the screen. I will be linking it with all these other videos that you can watch. It'll help kind of explain this as well. It'll give you some examples and draw it for you on practice things so you can understand this. But a couple of gerrymandering techniques that are used. First is packing. This is attempting to pack people of the opposing party into a few districts as possible in order to swing the remaining districts in the majority party's favor. So this is where you try to take the side that doesn't have as many supporters in the area, and you pack them into as few as many. They're guaranteed to win those, but they have no shot to win any other district. Okay, so you pack them in, and you're guaranteed to win two. Even though you have 40% of the vote, you're only going to win one district out of 6. Even so, it doesn't always match up to the demographic makeup of the district. Cracking is you're attempting to divide a concentration of the opposing party in order to dilute their political party. So this way, cracking is you take it and you crack them into several districts. Like this may be that you're dividing up a neighborhood or a certain part of town into multiple districts, and you're diluting that voting block that is right there, so they cannot win any representatives in Congress. And then consequences of gerrymandering. There's another video I will also post. Some of it is a review, but it also talks about some consequences of gerrymandering as well. First and foremost, you need to understand that officials elected are not necessarily representative of the population. So the population may be very diverse, but the people winning are not, because they've gerrymandered that district so that those that support say the more traditional type of politician are going to be able to win very easily. It favors incumbents and discourages challengers, because incumbents have won and they have name recognition, they have a war chest, but they've won there before, and so most likely they have a lot of support and they are able to continue to win. And then it can negatively affect minority representation. It's much harder in gerrymandered districts to get minorities to win, especially if you're doing cracking, where you're cracking the minority groups into several districts so they cannot vote as a big block. Okay, any questions on any of this, please let me know.